Marjorie Harvey's private letter to Steve during his career crisis was never meant to be public. When he read it on air, it proved what true love looks like, and showed that behind every successful man is a woman who believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. It was February 2024, and Steve Harvey was taping a Valentine's Day special episode about love that endures when something unexpected happened that would give viewers the most intimate glimpse into his marriage they had ever seen. The show was supposed to feature couples sharing their love stories, but during a commercial break, Steve's producer Janet Miller handed him an envelope that had been found in his dressing room desk drawer during a recent cleaning. "Steve, we found this letter in your desk," Janet said. "It's addressed to you from Marjorie, and it looks like it's been there for years." Steve looked at the envelope, which was yellowed with age, and had his name written in Marjorie's distinctive handwriting. The postmark showed it was from 2009, during one of the most difficult periods of his career and personal life. "I've never seen this before," Steve said, genuinely puzzled. "Marjorie never gave me this letter." When Steve opened the envelope and began reading the letter, his expression changed completely. His hands started shaking, and tears began forming in his eyes as he realized what he was holding. "Oh my God," Steve whispered to himself. She wrote this when everything was falling apart. The letter was dated March 15, 2009, during a period when Steve's career was in crisis. His finances were strained, and his marriage to Marjorie was being tested by pressures that few couples ever have to endure. In 2009, Steve was between major television contracts, facing financial difficulties from his divorce settlements, and struggling to blend his family with Marjorie's children from her previous marriage. The stress had taken a toll on their relationship, and there had been moments when both of them wondered if their marriage would survive. What Steve didn't know was that during this dark period, Marjorie had written him a letter expressing her deepest feelings about their marriage, her unwavering commitment to him, and her belief in his future success. But instead of giving him the letter, she had kept it private, choosing to show her support through actions rather than words. After reading the letter during the commercial break, Steve made an unprecedented decision. "Janet, I want to share this letter with the audience," Steve said, still emotional from reading it. "This isn't just about me and Marjorie. This is about what real love looks like when everything goes wrong." When the cameras started rolling again, Steve was visibly different than he had been before the break. He was vulnerable, emotional, and clearly struggling with powerful feelings. "Ladies and gentlemen, something just happened during the break that has shaken me to my core," Steve announced to his audience. "I want to share something with you that I've never shared before. Something that shows you what real love looks like." Steve held up the letter, his hands still trembling slightly. "This is a letter that my wife Marjorie wrote to me 15 years ago, during the worst period of our marriage and my career. I never knew this letter existed until 5 minutes ago. She wrote it but never gave it to me, and I'm about to read it for the first time in front of all of you." The studio audience fell silent, sensing that they were about to witness something deeply personal and profound. "Before I read this letter, I need to give you some context," Steve continued. "In 2009, I was broke. I was between television contracts. I owed more money than I was making, and I was struggling to support 2 families, my kids from my previous marriage and Marjorie's children." Steve paused, gathering his composure. "Marjorie and I had been married for 2 years, and the pressure was enormous. We were arguing about money, about the kids, about my career. There were nights when we both wondered if we had made a mistake getting married. I was depressed, I was angry, and I wasn't being the husband that Marjorie deserved. I was so focused on my failures that I couldn't see her pain or her sacrifice." Steve opened the letter and began to read in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "My dearest Steve, I'm writing this letter because I don't know how else to tell you what's in my heart. I see you struggling, and I see you in pain, and it breaks my heart because I know you think you're failing me and the children." Steve paused, wiping tears from his eyes. "You think that because the money is tight and the future is uncertain, you're not being a good husband or father. but I need you to know that you're wrong about that." The audience was completely silent, many people crying as they listened to this intimate expression of marital love. Steve continued reading, "Steve, I didn't marry you for your money or your success. I married you because of who you are when everything else is stripped away. I married your heart, your humor, your determination, and your soul. When I watch you with our children, I see a man who would do anything for his family. When I see you working 18-hour days trying to provide for us, I see a man who refuses to give up even when everything seems impossible." Steve's voice broke as he read the next part. "You keep apologizing for not being able to give me the life you think I deserve. But Steve, you are the life I deserve. You are my blessing, not my burden." The studio audience was now crying openly, moved by the raw honesty and love in Marjorie's words. "I know you're scared about the future," Steve continued reading. "I know you lie awake at night, worrying about how you're going to pay the bills and take care of all of us. But I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Rich or poor, successful or struggling, I'm your wife, and I'm here for whatever comes next." Steve had to stop reading for a moment to compose himself. "The letter goes on," Steve told the audience. "But I want to tell you what happened during that period that makes this letter so powerful. In 2009, I was so depressed and discouraged that I was considering giving up on television altogether. I was thinking about taking a regular job, maybe going back to selling cars, anything that would provide steady income for our family. What I didn't know was that Marjorie was watching me fall apart, and instead of complaining or pressuring me, she was writing letters like this one that she never showed me." Steve looked directly at the camera, speaking to his wife, who he knew was watching from home. "Marjorie, if you're watching this, I want you to know that finding this letter today has reminded me why I fell in love with you. You loved me at my worst, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and stood by me when it would have been easier to walk away." But Steve wasn't finished. He had more of the letter to share. "The letter ends with something that I want every married person to hear," Steve said, opening it again. "Steve, marriage isn't about living happily ever after. It's about choosing to love each other through the times when happiness feels impossible. It's about being partners in both success and failure, in wealth and poverty, in confidence and doubt. I choose you, Steve Harvey, not because our life is easy, but because our love is real. And real love doesn't run away when things get hard. It fights harder to make things work. Whatever happens with your career, whatever challenges we face, I want you to remember that you are enough. You have always been enough, and I will love you whether you're performing for millions of people or just making me laugh in our kitchen. Your devoted wife, Marjorie." When Steve finished reading the letter, the studio was completely silent except for the sound of people crying. "That letter was written during the darkest period of my career," Steve said, his voice filled with emotion. 6 months after Marjorie wrote it, I got the call to host Family Feud. A year later, I got my daytime talk show. 2 years later, we renewed our vows in a ceremony that celebrated not just our love, but our survival." Steve stood up and addressed his audience directly. "I want every person in a relationship to understand what you just heard. That letter wasn't about a perfect marriage. It was about a committed marriage. Marjorie didn't pretend that our problems didn't exist. She acknowledged them and chose to love me through them anyway. She didn't write that letter to make me feel better. She wrote it to remind herself why she was choosing to stay when staying was the harder choice." The most powerful moment came when Steve called Marjorie, who was at home watching the show. "Marjorie, are you there?" "I'm here, baby." Marjorie's voice came through the studio speakers, and she was clearly crying. "Why didn't you ever give me that letter?" "Because I didn't write it for you, Steve. I wrote it for me. I wrote it because I needed to remind myself of why I loved you, why I believed in you, and why I was choosing to fight for our marriage instead of giving up." But baby, reading those words today, they would have meant everything to me back then. "Steve, you didn't need my words. You needed my actions. You needed me to stay, to support you, to believe in you, even when you couldn't believe in yourself. The letter was just me working through my own feelings so I could be the wife you needed. The audience gave Marjorie a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Marjorie, I love you more today than I did the day I married you, Steve said into the phone. And finding this letter has reminded me why. You didn't just love me, you chose to love me every day, even when I was hard to love. Steve, that's what marriage is. It's not a feeling, it's a choice you make every single day. The episode featuring Marjorie's letter became one of the most shared and discussed episodes in Steve Harvey Show history. Millions of viewers were moved by the raw honesty and commitment shown in both Marjorie's letter and Steve's willingness to share such a private moment publicly. Marriage counselors across the country began using clips from the episode to help couples understand the difference between fairy tale expectations and real love. The letter went viral on social media, with couples sharing their own stories of choosing love during difficult times. 6 months later, Steve and Marjorie renewed their vows again, this time incorporating some of the words from her letter into their ceremony. Marjorie, 15 years ago, you wrote words that you thought only God would see, Steve said during the ceremony. But those words have now inspired millions of people to fight for their marriages instead of giving up when things get hard. Today, Steve keeps a framed copy of Marjorie's letter in his office, not as a reminder of their difficult times, but as a testament to the kind of love that chooses commitment over convenience. That letter taught me that real love isn't about finding someone who makes your life easy, Steve often says. It's about finding someone who makes the hard times worth fighting through. Marjorie's letter has become a symbol of committed love for couples around the world, proving that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones we write to ourselves when we need to remember why love is worth the struggle. I kept that letter private for 15 years because I thought it was just about my feelings, Marjorie later explained. But when Steve shared it publicly, I realized that every married person has moments when they need to remind themselves why they chose their spouse. That letter was my reminder, and now I hope it can be a reminder for others too. The letter that was never meant to be seen has now been read by millions, serving as a testament to the kind of love that endures not because it's easy, but because it's real. If this incredible story of committed love and the letters we write to ourselves moved you, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that real love is a choice you make every day, especially when it's hard. Have you ever written a letter to express feelings you couldn't say out loud? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about love, marriage, and the commitment that makes relationships last.